Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Empower LEP Podcast. I'm your host, Jana Parker, licensed educational psychologist, group practice owner and mentor at Empower LEP. Today, I am hosting Dr. Byron McClure. He's an iconic figure in our school psych world who launched, not even a year ago, School Psych AI. Byron has had an entrepreneurial spirit from the get-go. He is an achiever, he is a doer, a go-getter, and one of those I'll figure it out kind of guys. He takes his ideas, he puts them into action, but first he simply listens to what people want and works to solve those problems. Byron and I go through his history. We end up at School Psych AI and its potential to save school psychs from burnout. And of course, I asked, will AI take over our jobs? And he's more concerned with burnout taking jobs, and he has a really good point. So anyway, enough of this intro. I will let the man speak for himself. As always, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome back to the LEP Podcast, Dr. Byron McClure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you, and I feel a bit like you are iconic in the field of school psychology right now. And so I feel really fortunate to have you on the show.
You are too kind. Iconic that's a big statement, but thank you. I absolutely appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. Well, I really feel like you're doing things that are like you are putting like a stamp on school psychology that no one's done before, and taking us in a direction that is really innovative and unique. And so I'm looking forward to hearing all about School Psych AI as we get towards the end of our time together. But yeah, I guess that's what I mean by iconic. Like, you're really like, and also in other ways. So I'm just excited to hear your whole story because I've read your bio and you've done a lot of really interesting things. So again, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
All right. So Byron, can you kind of take us back to the beginning of your career as a school psychologist and kind of how you got started, what made you interested in the field in general?
Yeah, and this is always a great place to start because I actually did not start as a school psychologist. I actually went to graduate school to become a clinical psychologist. Even if we wanted to back up before that, my hope was to make it to the NBA or the NFL. That didn't work out, and so my fallback plan was to become a psychologist. And all I have been exposed to through my undergrad at Hampton University, the real HU, was clinical psychology. I heard of IO. I heard of educational psychology. And so I applied to several programs, ended up going to Abilene Christian University for their Masters of Clinical Psychology. My grades were terrible. Couldn't go to a doc program straight out of undergrad. Ended up getting accepted to ACU, went there and was studying to become a clinical psychologist. And then I think, and I always tell this part of the story, it was a divine intervention. Ended up meeting the director of the school psychology program, Dr. Jennifer Shoemaker, and she really shared just the importance of early prevention and intervention. And for me, my mission has always been to improve outcomes for Black people, for people of color, for people who have been historically marginalized. And she told me, she was like, hey, like people are in schools, and if you start with youth, you can prevent problems before they go into adolescence and adulthood. And it just made sense.
Yep.
And so I actually made a switch that first year, my program from clinical psychology to school psychology, and then did all the necessary steps, and then started practicing. And so that was my introduction to the field of school psychology. I
Yeah.
had to be, what, 22, 23 years old? And that was the first time I heard about what a school psychologist was. But from the moment I heard about it, I fell in love with it.
You know what? I had a really similar thing happen to me. I was also in a clinical psychology program. I had never heard of school psychology. I thought maybe IO. And, when I was graduating college, my parents said, well, if you don't go to grad school now, you're never going to go back. And I was like, oh gosh, well, I mean, what am I going to do? So I applied to a professional school because you can just get into those because you have to pay a bunch of money. And it's not, it was like a PsyD program. And so I got in at 22 years old and I was like, what? Like I realized I don't want to be a therapist. And I was doing a counseling internship in or practicum in a school. And I was like, I don't have enough, like if I'm only seeing this kid for the half hour a week, I don't feel like I have enough like influence or there's so many things going on in the system. I want to have a bigger role. And I met the school psychologist and I was like, what is this
Wow.
job? What is this? And so I quit that program a year and a half into it. And then a year later I applied to a school psych program because I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing, and that's a really interesting story. I want to say it's a unique story, but I hear so many people who have similar experiences to where they either just found out about school psychology, they made a switch from clinical to school psychology. Um, but I think if we were able, and that's a entirely different conversation, but you know, school psychology, we need to brand ourselves a lot better. And there's some Facebook groups that are having conversations right now about recruitment and retention. But here's two of us, myself and you, who kind of stumbled in, I would say in a divine way, into the field.
Yeah, and we stumbled in and then we also stumbled out.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But we're both doing something kind of like bigger, like using what we now know to help improve the field in different ways.
That's right.
Yeah,
I love that. So now I'm gonna have to add that we stumbled in and then we stumbled out, but I think using it in a way to have an even larger impact,
right.
which is still important.
Yeah, yeah. Just a little plug here for our awesome guest. School Psych AI is running a back to school promotion through September 28th. Use code SPAIPRO to get 10% off of an annual membership. Also, in case you haven't signed up yet, Meredith Gleason and I are launching our monthly group mentoring sessions. They begin on September 23rd at 5:30 p.m. These groups will be held monthly, and it's a space for us to build community, learn from each other, and get all of your business and clinical questions answered in a group format. I am so excited to lead the first one this month. Sign up for $69 a month or get a 3-month membership for $155, which is 25% off. And you get 10% off of a one-on-one mentoring session with either me or Meredith. So go to empowerlep.com/mentorship program to sign up. And remember School Psych AI for a 10% off annual membership, SPAIPRO. Okay, great. So you were a school psychologist, and tell me about all the things that happened during your career there and the kinds of things that influenced you, the interests that you had. Yeah, take me through that.
Yeah. So I started practicing in 2010. And then I practiced in Southern Maryland to start. In my latter years, I moved to DC, where I worked in DC. But I worked across all levels. I worked elementary, middle school, high school. I worked in suburban, urban, rural settings. I worked in an alternative school. Inside of all of those settings, I my primary interest was working with youth, especially uh, boys who have been identified with emotional disabilities. Um, and that was my bread and butter. And so I ran social skill groups that evolved into SEL groups. Did a ton of check in, check out. Um, did a ton of PBIS, MTSS, 504 coordinator. And then um, when I transitioned into DC in 2016, um, I really had a cool opportunity to do more innovative work with some of the things that I have been doing. Again, at that point, I have been working with, youth with emotional disabilities and found success and really moving the needle to improving outcomes, which was really great. And so when I went to DC, they were like, "Hey, you've been doing good. You know, what are some other things that we can do?" And they gave me the green light, and so really started getting involved with restorative practices, things such as trauma responsive schools, doing culture climate walkthroughs. So really being innovative.
Yeah.
Um, and that was always fun. That was always exciting. That work then led me to being able to be part of a team in DC that was responsible with radically transforming the way how we did school there in Southeast DC. And so we actually the school turnaround work, but our team was called the school redesign team, and I was elected to be part of that team. And my focus and responsibility was on the culture, climate, mental health, and well being from the perspective of students. And so I actually stepped out of the school psychologist role into this leadership role, and had much more of a systems level view, which that really propelled me even more so to look at how can we improve outcomes, not just for students at the individual level, but at a systems level. And then in that stance, it just grew and evolved of all the work I've been doing in DC and Maryland, from K through 12 and all these different settings, looking at it from a systems level approach. How can we actually package this? And what is my approach? How come I've found some success? I've had a lot of failures as well. And so I really tapped into this strength-based philosophy of this is how I'm approaching it. Like seeing something that's wrong, moving it to what's strong. And to me, it was always simple. But I recognize a lot of people don't really operate and think that way. And so I was able to put a lot of my thinking into a book called Hacking Deficit Thinking. That book did pretty good. Been able to speak on just my philosophy and approach to this work. I do a lot of speaking opportunities, engagements just about this philosophy, and we'll get to it. I know you said a little later, but then seeing that psychologists were struggling across the country in a very real way. Hopefully we can edit that out. Thought I snoozed this. Let me put this on Do Not Disturb. There we go.
I didn't
Uh,
even hear anything.
okay, it was a chime came
Yeah, it
through.
didn't even come through.
Yeah, but now that has really moved me to where I am now. Um, Finding a way to meet the needs of psychologists so that we're not burdened by the
Right.
stress of writing reports.
Yeah.
But I'll stop there.
Yeah. Um, I guess I have like one follow-up question to that kind of work that you were doing. What what were some of the biggest barriers that you faced in that systems work?
Whew.
Sorry.
Ay, ay, ay. The mindset of adults
Yeah,
and staff. Like the kids are fine.
right, right,
Like that's the conundrum, right? Like the kids are gonna be kids. Like they adapt, they're resilient. Um, but the mindset of educators and just people in general, it was difficult because of the system that they were forced to operate within. And so especially when I was in DC, when you have a system that, and where I was in Southeast DC, that doesn't provide the resources, that doesn't give all students the same opportunities, to where you have to fight over, copy paper and all these different things to where, you're asked to do so much with so little. Um, you can become jaded really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at the practices, you're just stuck in this system that has operated just off the strength of how it operates. What I mean by that is, if you ask somebody, why do we wear uniforms here? It'll be because we've always wore uniforms. Or why do we have this policy here? Well, because we've always had this policy. And there's no evolution, there's no growth. When you're asked to, track all of these lesson plans and all of these things and documentation and paperwork becomes a priority over the well-being of the young people that you serve, and teachers can't even teach, that's stressful. And because of that, for so many different reasons, you might not have teachers to buy in. And another element too that's also important in a place like where I worked and a lot of districts, you'll have initiative come year one. By the end of the year, it's that initiative is out, and then the next year it's another initiative that comes in. But
Right.
I remember one teacher, we laugh about it now, but we were presenting. I think it was my first year presenting. School had just came back in session, and it's like, here's this new initiative. I'm new at the school. We're gonna roll out restorative practices, and one teacher is like, well, you'll try, you won't be successful, and you'll be gone. Restorative practices will be gone, and we'll still be here. And it's no fault to them. And as we had conversations over the years, because we were still there, it was just because people had come, people had gone, initiatives had come, initiatives had gone, and then staff are left to clean up the mess. And so that's a very stressful thing to have to deal with. And I think where I was different and where some of the things that I brought to the school where it really differed is you got to get on the ground level. Like you got to get with the people. Like, and that was something that I really prided myself on. It's like understanding the needs of our staff on a deep level and then working to meet those needs to get buy-in into what we're doing. And so yeah, back to the original question. I mean, just the mindset of staff, like changing that. And as we got into our redesign work, we really looked at like systems and change management theory. And we came to learn, well, I learned that any system that is worth changing will take 5 to 7 years to actually bring about meaningful change. And in places where you need change now, that's a long time. And it can be hard, it can be tiresome. You want to give up. But that was one of the hardest things that I found.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's hard, kind of shifting over to school psychologists now. It's similar with school psychologists, just feeling like you were saying before, overburdened. Oh, like there's too much, like it's creating significant burnout. And I do some supervising of interns in a school district from my private practice, which is a really unique setup we have, where the interns have their school psychologists at their sites who are supporting them, but then they also have me and a colleague of mine teaching them from just like, you know, be an excellent school psychologist perspective, and we're not involved in the politics of the schools. And so they have kind of both lenses, which I think has its pros and cons, but it is a unique experience that they get. And one of the things that I always try to say at the beginning of the year that we have these interns is, really try to be a positive light in your school.
Yes.
And you are going to have a lot of different kinds of personalities and mindsets coming toward you. And like you have to do a lot of observing and feeling like understanding kind of how you can fit in and how you can help. But yeah, you can't go in with like, fireworks, like I'm going to save the world, right? You have to kind of get down there and understand the needs and how you can help, but also let the negativity kind of roll off you, because it's so easy, especially even when you're working, like if you have a supervisor and you're an intern, your supervisor might be totally burned out, and we need school psychologists and we need them to stay in schools, and we need, so I want to take you into how school psych AI came about, because it sounds like it's kind of come out of this, like how do we find ways to help save school psychologists and keep this work that we're doing where it should be focused, rather than being so focused on the report. However, like it's the reports that legally people get so hung up on, right? So it's really important to have a good and solid evaluation. But I think, like the extent to which evaluation reports have changed over the course of my career, which is just a little bit longer than the course of your career, just a few years ahead, it's insanity what it's become, right? So anyway, I'll stop there and let you kind of take us into that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And to start, we 100% have to have reports that are legally defensible. I perceive a challenge to be that's where too many psychologists who might be bound by, policies and, red tape and bureaucracy, and this is just the letter of the law, we stop there. We have to provide legally defensible reports, and that's our jobs. And it's like, wait, we got in here to serve the people, to serve kids. And what I see is we are not doing all the things that I know school psychologists should be doing. Dr. Gabriel Carlson, she talks about we are in the midst of uh, a mental health crisis. And I think it's such a shame that psychologists are not at the forefront leading the solution to this mental health crisis. And part of that reason is because we're stuck in our testing closets, you know, testing, producing legally defensible reports that in the off chance you're in a litigious area, an attorney might read it. But other than that, I mean, nobody else is reading our reports like that. They want to know, is this kid going to qualify and be eligible? Um, and so if you look at, some of the NASP data, I mean, majority of psychologists who are working in public schools are evaluated and making eligibility determination decisions. Um, does this kid qualify for special education? Say it another way, where we're operating within a very narrow scope of our practice. And to me, it's very simple. That's something we have to do. That's part of the job. But I personally have experience operating within the full scope of our practice model and seeing the impact that I've been able to make um, at that systems level. And it's a beautiful thing. And so why I'm so on fire and passionate about it is because I've been able to do it.
Yeah.
And I've been able to see the impact. And I'm in rooms now because I'm at this leadership level, and I'm fortunate to have this bird's eye view. The reality is, oftentimes school psychologists, like we're not in these rooms where decisions are being made, and it is not benefiting us. So with all of that context, I've always been about taking action and doing something about it. And so I saw a need for us to expand our scope of practice. And what's the barrier? It's being stuck writing reports. I wanted to leverage the technology, that's artificial intelligence, the power of large language models, to help us automate the task. I mean, this is really That simple. It
But
goes back to,
it
yeah,
had
go ahead.
literally just started though. Like AI was just at its inception.
Mhm.
How did you go, that's it. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, someone told me a while ago that I have, and it was hard for me to receive it, but I have an ability to see around the corner,
Mm.
to see things like before it happens. And how they framed it is being a visionary leader. But to me, it's even more simple than that. It's listening to people and then meeting their needs. Like that's it. So first you got to talk to people. What are people hearing? What are people seeing? What are people struggling with? And then, hey, what is it that you need? What will solve your problem? Oh, if I could do this. Oh, if I could do that. Hey, I need that. Oh, okay. Let's go do it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But since, I mean, that's just how I've always carried my life. So with this, I saw whenever I would speak, um, I've been fortunate to go across the country. I've been to Nova Scotia. I've had some really cool opportunities, and I feel like I would give the speech of a lifetime. And without fail, when I would get off the stage, people would come up to me, loved your talk, amazing. But now I'm gonna go back and do these 50 evaluations that I have waiting for me.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I'm missing the mark. And so talking to people, I understood the reports are really a barrier to people falling deeply in love and staying deeply in love and not stumbling out of the profession. So to me, like I have been using this technology because I'm not the best writer in the world. I can talk all day in the paint, right? I mean, for those who are listening, I was a little late to this podcast, but to me, it's easy to pop on my microphone and talk. But if you say, Byron, put everything that you're saying right now down on paper, we're gonna have a problem. So I personally was using this technology and it helped me. So I figured if it can help me, it might help other people.
Yeah.
Now, how can we leverage this technology to help people? Now I have this change management and systems level conception in my mind from the work that I've done. How can we help people to leverage this technology at scale? Let's build an MVP and put it out to the world and see how it goes. And from the moment I put it out, we're approaching a year. September 28th is the date that I released it to the public. The rest is history.
Yeah.
So
When did it start? When did that idea start? And how long from the moment you thought, I'm going to do this, to the time that you put it out?
that's the first time I've been asked that question. Like people aren't gonna believe me. Like a week, maybe.
How did you do that? Like, okay, so you have to have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit and understanding, like how you pull the pieces together to get something done that's like well outside of uh our you know what we've been taught as school psychologists, right? So how did you like do that? Who'd you have to get on board? Because this is like my audience is they have an entrepreneurial spirit, like some of them are like, how do I do this? So how did you go like, okay, I need this, or like, how do I figure out even what I need to do something
Yeah.
like this?
And so often that's exactly the problem that stops people from becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They'll overthink and they'll believe I have to have this, I have to have that, I have to have all these things lined up in order. And by the time you get everything lined up in order, it's a year later and somebody else has beat you to it. So my philosophy is fail fast. We learned that during the school redesign work. Look, and it's not failure in the traditional sense of you did something wrong, but it's your learning
Mhm.
along the way. And
Yeah.
so my philosophy was YouTube is free. So let me go to YouTube, see what I need to learn, put something out there, and get feedback from people along the way. I'm hearing what people are saying they need. They need a faster and more efficient way to write reports. I think I have a way. So now let me talk to some people. Hey, do you think this might be helpful? Okay, let me go learn because I'm using this technology myself. what models can I bring in to actually meet these needs? And so I took those things, created a MVP, put up a email collection thing. You give me your email, and then you'll get access to the site. Made the site go live on September 28th and pushed it out to the world. And that was it.
I wish I had like some, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, how do you even get a platform? Like, how do you do this platform thing? Do you like need other people to help you, like people who are in tech and have, some knowledge base that you don't have? Or did you go out and learn everything? Did you need to get investors? Like, how did that work?
All really, really good questions. And so that was September 28th, put it out to the world. And then I learned very quickly a little bit more context. This is technically my second company. My
Okay.
first company was Lessons for SEL.
Okay.
And I did that solo. And that was a curriculum, put that out to the world. That company ended up getting acquired by a larger company, Seven Mindsets. And so I learned some things along the way.
Got it.
One of the biggest things is I can't do everything by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I struggle with that at times because I think I can. But fast forward to this company, right? Fast forward to this company, I started and I did everything by myself. And then as we were growing, very, very, I'm talking thousands of users, like month over month, thousands. I recognize the little HTML, the little bit of JavaScript, the little bit of website building, and I don't want to diminish it by saying little because it does take a little bit of knowledge to be able to do that. But I learned that from YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, I recognize I hit my cap very fast where people are like, hey, I need help this. Hey, I would love to see this feature. Hey, can we do this? And I said, okay, I need some help. And it just so happened, data security privacy is a big, big thing. And I wanted to make sure my platform was secure. And just in that time, who is now my CTO, Ed, he reached out to me. His wife is a psychologist. She had been following some of the things that I have been doing. He reached out to me and was asking me all these questions about data, privacy, how we're handling it. I was like, you seem like you know what you're doing. Like, let's talk. We had a conversation. We had similar ideologies about how to approach this work. And then he became my partner. And so Ed is my co-founder, and where my knowledge gap around tech and development kind of plateaued, like he was able to step in. And that's where we see the original version of School Psych AI when it had the dark purple background. Now it's becoming much more of a platform to where, depending on where people will listen to this past Labor Day. We just had our most recent updates to the platform. And now we can do so many things. But yeah, I used my knowledge, took it as far as I could, and then brought in people who could help me take it to that next step.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're touching on a lot of important things, I think, so many things for having or like being an entrepreneur and how things kind of work in life. And some are like, you just got to get out there and start doing it and take some risks. Another is it is so important who you know and your network, and even who you don't know, but just who you somehow get in front of, right? Because this partnership for you came from somebody who you didn't even know,
That's true.
you know? Yeah, and also like knowing when it's time to say, I need help.
And that's a struggle for me. That is, if you go back and look at through any of my evaluations, um, Byron needs to ask for help. You don't have to do everything by yourself. And I will. Like, all right, let me go figure out how to do this. And I talk a lot about my top strengths, and people knowing their strengths. One of my top strengths is achiever, and I'm gonna figure it out. Like all I need is time and I'll figure it out. But then that can get me into, all right, dude, just ask somebody.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
could. Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So now take us into school psych AI and, your kind of big vision for it and the kinds of things that now it is doing and doing well for school psychologists.
yeah, my simple vision is to make something that people want. Like that's it. Make something that people want, make something that people need. And so every step of the way, I'm talking to districts, I'm talking to practitioners every single day. Like, what is it that you're seeing? What are you struggling with? If you could do this, how would this make your job easier? If you had this tool, if you had this resource, how would your life be easier? How can we bring meaning back into your work? What is it that you need to get impact? And just asking these type of questions and then listening to people is crucial. And so I want to make something that people want and need. Like that's the vision. Like that's so simple to me. In terms of where we are now, we're doing just that. Like the release that we just had, it's things that people want. It's things that people said that they need. Some of those things being the ability to provide a more detailed interpretations and analysis in their psych evals. So we released a tool called Sophia Enhance. People want the ability to interact with documents. So we added a PDF upload feature. People want the ability to track their cases. So we created a caseload tracker. I mean, listen to what people want and need and give it to them.
Yeah.
And that's what we purpose to do. And that's currently where we are inside of our platform. I will say that because AI is so new, there must be a level of education in AI literacy. And so that's something I want to do more of. Over the summer, we had two PDs on prompting, on the ethical usage. I collaborated with the Arizona Association of School Psychologists, and we had a very strong professional development on the ethical usage of AI. But there has to be literacy around, how to responsibly use these tools. What are the ethical considerations? So that's something that I want to do more of moving forward in the future as well. But yeah, that's the core of what we have right now. It's funny. This morning, just had a meeting with my team and making sure that because again, we're not even a year, making sure that our platform is stable, making sure that we're working out, those kinks and bugs, that we're delivering something that people want and need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, and so what would you say, like what are the processes, I guess, that districts are going through to say, this is what we are all going to use, and is there any kind of, just because I haven't used it enough to know how the reports all come out, do they say like, well, this is like the same as this one, are people are in the same district using it like in a way where it looks, how, what's the
Yeah.
formatting like, and what are some of the questions that districts ask? Because I'm assuming that some people who listen to this are going to be like, I wonder if I could get that in my district. What are some things that happen there?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's funny, I have two monitors. On my other monitor, I see a question from one of my team members, and they're asking about the ability to add in a specific template for some of the reports that they have. And it kind of goes to this question. And so we provide right now, we have premium users. If you're an individual psychologist or practitioner, you could get access to the platform. on a monthly or annual basis. You could pay directly. Then we have an enterprise offering, really geared towards schools, districts, organizations, private practices, clinics, and you can buy into that at that level. Now, what that means is those who are at that enterprise level, we're providing a level of customization. So, as an example, yesterday we met with the district in the southern region. They said, "Hey, we need to have the ability to calculate our school calendar. So we need a caseload tracker calendar. We need the ability to add in certain action steps and capture it so that we can see, hey, this is how much time we're spending on assessments, reports, whatever, whatever." And then they say, hey, we use these assessments all the time. And so, can you make sure that we have access to these assessments? And then they are going to be sending us over like their district template. And we're going to find ways to automate it, but then all their users will log into their platform and it looks just like this for that district. All of their assessments, their template built in. Now, if you're in a district on the West Coast, we'll give you a platform for District B that's on the West Coast. And so, really, where it starts to get very, or where it starts to differ is the level of customizations. But at the core, like the platforms are the same, especially for those premium users.
Okay. And what are some of the things that districts are really like, oh, this might be really helpful? And then what are some of the reservations, if any, that districts or organizations would have?
Yeah. The things that are very helpful that districts love, the ability to track their cases. Right now, it might be shocking, but their districts struggle with a universal reporting system.
Mhm.
Being able to say, hey, here's how many cases we've completed for the entire year. Here's the type of evals we're doing, like the reporting. We might just assume that's happening. It's not. Where we do get some reservations, this technology is just so new. And so, will AI take my job?
Yeah, we got to get into
That's
that
what
conversation
people
too.
are asking. Um, what are some of the data privacy ramifications around it? I mean, that's always fair.
Mhm.
And then cost. What's the cost associated with it? Is it worth it? So those are some of the common things that were asked.
Is there anything about, legally defensible, or how do you then make your clinical judgment? And what if this is a PSW district and we use XBAS or
Yeah.
those kinds of things?
Yeah, we had several requests for like I need my template to be PSW. I need my template to be illegally defensible. I like how you all are doing strength based. Right now, our template is we call it a strength based psycho ed evaluation template. But then people want their own. Some are doing PSW, like you said. We're not there yet, but it's something that is on our roadmap that we do want to give people the option. And how we've conceptualized it is when you go to our report writer, it'll simply be the click of a button. And what type of assessment template report do you want? PSW, um, uh, cross battery, CHC, neuropsych. We get a lot of requests for neuropsychs, strength based. So we will have those options available.
Hmm. Okay, well, and then here's like the $1 million question, like, will AI take our jobs? I mean, this has gotten, I use a couple things like I've, I like some like Bastion GPT to kind of help. And it's interesting because the more you use it, the more it's being able to do on its own. I mean, my husband's put in a referral question to just chat GPT and it wrote up a psych report. Just, I mean, when are parents going to go like, oh, well, I can just ask ChatGPT if my kid has ADHD? Like,
Yeah. Um,
it's so
to
scary.
answer that question, here's my take on it.
Yeah.
Will AI take your job? And I answered that with another question. Has AI taken any jobs of school psychologists right now? At this point, not that we know of. But the bigger question is, what has taken our jobs? And to me, that's clear: stress and burnout. So we have to really demystify this boogeyman, robots taking over the world, like picture that's out there. It's a fair conversation to have. But to this day, right now, I know people who are not coming back, who have
Mm-hmm.
left the field. And if we look at numbers, it's hundreds, potentially thousands of people who are leaving year after year. Here's what we know, and this is from Kelly Valancourt, who's the director of policy at NASP, the National Association of School Psychologists. She said that we need 63,000 school psychologists to begin meeting the needs of young people. The field of school psychology has a recruitment and retention problem. There's efforts underway. The association has done good work trying to remediate that. There are researchers and people who have worked tirelessly. There are people who have dedicated, their professional careers to answering this question. But the reality is, stress and burnout is a beast, and we're in a fight, and we're losing good psychologists, like great, exceptional psychologists, to stress and burnout because of the role of the job. So will AI take our jobs? Eh, who knows? But what's taking our jobs right now is stress and burnout. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that if we don't do something, we will never meet that number of getting 63,000 school psychologists in the field and keeping good psychologists in the field.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. I mean, it took me,
Yeah.
that took me away from the schools.
Yeah.
Ah, all right. So just a couple more questions. So if a private practitioner or clinic wants to use school psych AI, they kind of go through the same process as a school district would.
Yep, same process. We have a enterprise form on our website. Just go to our website, schoolpsych.ai. We have an enterprise, a request a quote form, request a quote, and then we'll get your basic demographic information. Then I'll listen to your needs, and ideally we'll meet those needs. But we have a number of private practices, clinics, who are already utilizing our platform.
Mm-hmm. Um, what has been like when you think about yourself now in business, because I think before we hit record, you had said that you've been out of the schools now for 2 years.
That's right.
What is it about this new phase of your life doing this that is filling your bucket? What are you loving about it, and what are some stressors?
Yeah, great question. So, at the time of this recording, my daughter, she's not feeling 100%, so she's home from school. I get to be here with her.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can go out for a walk if I want to, go to lunch. I can set my own schedule. I mean, I have the freedom to, you know, do what I want as long as the job is getting done. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm having impact. Again, my mission has always been to improve outcomes for youth of color, especially those from historically marginalized areas. I was doing that really well in Maryland. I did that extremely well in DC. But now I'm working with people nationally and internationally. And so this is going to sound very strange to say, but I have a much bigger impact now.
Yeah.
It's a bigger impact.
Yep.
Um, and then, because we are talking business, just the financial freedom it's on me, which to me, like I'm a bet on myself every single day. And where I was on the East Coast, the pay rate is a little bit higher, um, but it'll cap out. And I refuse to just work for somebody else my entire life. Although I must say, for those who are looking to be entrepreneurs, and you mentioned risk, and I'm glad that you said that, because there's risk associated with this. Like, I didn't know school psych AI was going to take off. There's always risk associated with it. Um, but with that, uh, if you have opportunity to like work a job, like do that and build your thing on the side too. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And then when you are ready to make that switch, like make that switch if it makes sense for where you are, your goals and objectives in life. For me, with my first company, I had to have some really honest conversations with my wife and our family, and where we were. And it made sense. And we did it. Now with School Psych AI, similar concepts. And it made sense. And it's on me for how hard I work, how many schools I'm reaching out to and connecting to. But you look at the earning potential from working inside of a district versus the earning potential, doing my own thing. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And the last thing I'll say about that, even with the other company, like I was told I would have to work in I had loans like a lot of people, that I would have to work, 10 years, public service, and then maybe, because there's some people who worked 10 years and didn't get their loans paid off. I didn't want to leave that up to chance.
Yeah.
And so by taking a risk, like I was able to put myself in a good position. So that
Mm-hmm.
would have never happened if I didn't take that risk.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one thing I ask guests as we're wrapping up, and you kind of already said one word of advice might be to keep what you've got going on and, do a little something on the side until you're kind of ready and it makes sense to make that switch. But what's something else you might tell an entrepreneurial spirit out there who's thinking of doing something else with their very strong and unique skill set as a school psychologist?
Yeah. Start with what's called a MVP, a minimal viable product. And um, I say that because, can you put something out to the world that people want? That's what I said I want to do. What happens is people might spend thousands. Let's use an app as an example. They might spend thousands of dollars on an app. They didn't talk to anybody. They didn't do any market research. They didn't fully discover. Anyways, eh, thousands of dollars out the door, and nobody wants their product. And so, how can you create version one of your idea and show a proof of concept? Do people want it? And that's exactly what I did. Back to the example of School Psych AI. I created the most basic element. Go to a website. Is this something that people want? Turned out it was.
Yep.
Okay, now I validated that idea. Now I can start putting a little bit more resources into it as well. So start with the MVP, start to prove your concept, but don't spend thousands of dollars before you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if people want to find you, where might they look? And if they want to try out School Psych AI, what do they need to do?
Yeah, if you want to try out School Psych AI, head over to our website, schoolpsych.ai. You can sign up for free, app.schoolpsych.ai. We have a free membership tier. If you want to try the premium, we have a 7-day free trial. Depending on when you listen to this, we're running 10% off of annual purchases. If you use the promo code SPAI Pro, that's SPAI Pro. That's SPAI Pro. Yep. And you'll get a 10% off of that annual discount. And if you want to follow our social media accounts at School Psych AI across all social media platforms. If you want to follow my personal accounts or my Byron McClure accounts, I'm on Instagram, bmcclure6. I am on X, formerly Twitter, School Psych Life. I don't use that as often. And then what else am I on? I'm on TikTok. I'm dabbling, trying. I'm there to School Psych Life, Dr. B, as in boy, and then YouTube as well. I mentioned School Psych AI across all social media platforms,
Yeah.
but definitely follow School Psych AI on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, we post demos, tutorials, how to. So definitely check out our YouTube channel.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really an inspiring conversation, and thank you for everything that you're doing for the field and to help solve our problems
Yeah.
and make our lives better and keep school psychologists in the field. I'm really excited to see where it's all going to go. And so thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you for listening to the Empower LEP podcast. Episodes can be found at empowerlep.com. If you liked what you heard, please leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to connect. I would love to learn more. I can be found at jana@empowerlep.com.